When we hear about the term fanatic or fascist leader, we think of dictators, ruthless rulers who destroy anyone who comes in their path. A fanatic leader always opposes different idea and beliefs, even if they are truthful or highly accurate. They propagate and spread lies to fasten their claims. But what if, I tell you, American democracy is about to face the type of fanatic leader which history has never seen yet coming? Donald J. Trump. From doing alleged tax evasion and fraud during his failed business career to illegally carrying away top-secret declassified document from Oval Office. By the end of his presidency, American society was the most internally divided since the Civil War period. Economic conditions even became worse. The national debt gone up by whopping 39% to $27 trillion. During his period, the economy lost 2.7 million jobs. The unemployment rate increased to 6.4%. According to the Washington Post fact-check, Trump gave a whopping 30,573 false and misleading claims during his 4-year period, making about 20 lies per day. He imposed a travel ban on many Muslim-majority countries. When the 2020 result was declared, he denied to believe it and even tried to overturn the government with the help of his supporters. This is the just tip of iceberg. In this video, we will expose how Trump inflated himself and his business ventures to look great and his untold stories about his politics. Trump was born on the 14th of June, 1946 in Queens, New York, just 10 months after World War II finale. His parents were Fred and Mary Trump. Fred Trump, in his early days, was a typical sales guy, but after 1920, he built his fortune by creating the Trump Organization from ashes. In May 1968, he graduated with a Bachelor of Science in Economics from Wharton School of University of Pennsylvania. Just 2 months later, at the peak of the Vietnam War, when the USA was in desperate need of troops, he was deemed fit for military service by the selection body at 6 feet 2 inches long and 160 pounds. But suddenly, he was diagnosed with classified 1Y, a conditional medical deferment. Coincidence, right? Later, during the 2016 election campaign, his lawyer threatened the school board not to release those details. Trump started his career in his father's Trump Organization in 1968 as an employee. Later in 1971, his father made him president of Trump Organization, and after that he started using the organization as an umbrella brand. Umbrella brand is the term used to describe array of product under one brand name. In 1982, with the help of journalist Jonathan Greenberg, he made it to the Forbes list with holding share of $200 million of family wealth. He was dropped from the list from 1990 to 1995 due to heavy losses from his several business failures. Later, journalist Jonathan Greenberg reported that Trump called him in 1984, pretending to be a fictional Trump Organization official named John Barron. Greenberg said that Trump, just to get a higher ranking on the Forbes 400 list of wealthy Americans, identified himself as Barron, and then falsely asserted that Donald Trump owned more than 90% of his father's business. Trump always advocates himself that he built his empire by just $1 million loan from his father and paid him back with full interest. But that's also a big lie, like his other things. In reality, he was already a millionaire by just the young age of 8. His father gave him $60 million at the start for business, which he was largely unable to pay back. Later on, again he received $413 million from his father company. Trump often advertises himself as a great businessman and having great sense of business acumen, but in reality, he was just an average businessman. Most of the businesses lead to failure. Donald Trump filed Chapter 11 bankruptcy code 6 times between 1991 and 2009 for his different business ventures. In 1984, Trump opened Harrah's at Trump Plaza, a hotel and casino, with financing and management help from the Holiday Corporation. It was highly unprofitable. In 1985, Trump also bought the unopened Atlantic City Hilton Hotel and renamed it Trump Castle. Both casinos filed for Chapter 11 bankruptcy protection in 1992. Trump bought a third Atlantic City venue in 1988, the Trump Taj Mahal. It was financed with $675 million in junk bonds and opened in April 1990. Just a year later, Trump filed for Chapter 11 bankruptcy protection. In 1988, Trump acquired the Plaza Hotel with a loan from a consortium of 16 banks. After being unable to cover losses, the hotel filed for bankruptcy protection in 1992. In 1988, Trump purchased the Eastern Airlines shuttle, financing the purchase with $380 million in loans from a syndicate of 22 banks. He renamed the airline to Trump Shuttle and operated it until 1992. Later on, Trump defaulted on his loans and ownership was passed to the banks. Trump also tried to create Tour de Trump, a knockoff version of Tour de France. It started in 1989 and took its last breath in 1996. In 1995, Trump defaulted on over $3 billion of bank loans, and the lenders seized the Plaza Hotel along with most of his other properties. Trump also tried to create his own Trump University, but within 7 years it also went defunct. With all these sets of failures, no sane person will ever call himself a person with good business acumen, but a narcissistic person does. Between 2004 to 2015, he was co-producer and host of reality show named The Apprentice, and became more famous with his catchphrase,
"You're fired, go."
He made around $400 million from this show. Trump registered as a Republican in 1987, but in the chase for quick success in political career, he switched parties multiple times. In 1987, to come out bold, he placed full-page advertisements in 3 major newspapers, expressing his views on foreign policy and how to eliminate the federal budget deficit, even though the irony here is that he was suffering massive losses in his business venture at that time. In a desperate event, he approached Lee Atwater in 1988, asking to be running mate for George H.W. Bush. Again, after a decade, Trump ran in the California and Michigan primaries for nomination as the Reform Party candidate for the 2000 presidential election, but withdrew from the race in February 2000. In 2011, he even made a ridiculous allegation against former President Barack Obama, accusing him of not being born in the USA, to which Obama responded by showing his birth certificate, making him look like a clown at the DNC speech. Trump announced his candidacy in June 2015. He quickly rose to the top of opinion polls. Trump's fame and provocative statements earned him an unprecedented amount of media coverage, elevating his standing in the Republican primaries. Trump and Clinton faced off in 3 presidential debates in September and October in 2016. Trump twice refused to say whether he would accept the result of the election if he loses. Trump described NATO as obsolete and espoused views that were described as non-interventionist and protectionist. His campaign platform emphasized renegotiating US-China relations and free trade agreements such as NAFTA, strongly enforcing immigration laws, and building a new wall along the US-Mexico border, and extreme vetting or even banning immigrants from Muslim-majority countries. Trump's FEC required reported listed assets above $1.4 billion. Trump did not release his tax returns, contrary to practice done by every major election candidate since 1976. After a lengthy court battle, the Supreme Court ordered to show the tax return to the prosecutor for review by a grand jury. After the November 8, 2016 election, Trump won 30 states, including Michigan, Pennsylvania, and Wisconsin, states which had been considered a blue wall of Democratic strongholds since the 1990s. As soon as he got into the office, he repealed the Affordable Care Act, or better known as Obamacare. It provided subsidies to help lower-income individuals afford insurance. Despite Trump's promise to eliminate the national debt in 8 years, Trump approved large increases in government spending and tax cuts. As a result, the federal budget deficit increased by a whopping 50% to nearly $1 trillion in 2019. Under Trump, the U.S. national debt increased by 39%, reaching $27.75 trillion by the end of his term. and the US debt-to-GDP ratio hit a post-World War II high. Trump also failed to deliver the $1 trillion infrastructure spending plan on which he had campaigned. Trump rejects the scientific consensus on climate change. He believes that global warming is just a hoax. He even reduced the budget for renewable energy research by a staggering 40%. He also withdrew from the Paris Agreement, making the US the only nation not to ratify it. Trump rolled back more than 100 federal environmental regulations, including those that curbed greenhouse gas emissions, air and water pollution, and the use of toxic substances. He weakened the protections for animals and environmental standards for federal infrastructure projects, and even expanded permitted areas for drilling and resource extraction, such as allowing drilling in the Arctic refuge. Now, when it comes about US-Mexico border, Trump administration separated more than 5,400 children from their parents in name of immigration control. Later, on June 26, 2018, when public outrage happened, court concluded that Trump administration had no system to keep track of separated children from parents. This was a huge blunder when it comes to family communication and even reunification. One of the Trump central campaign was to build a border wall to Mexico and have Mexico pay for it. He promised to build 1,000 miles of wall, but was only able to build 438 miles by the end of his term. In 2018, Trump refused to sign any appropriations bill from Congress unless it allocated $5.6 billion for the border wall, resulting in the federal government partially shutting down for 35 long days. It was the longest government shutdown in US history. Around 800,000 government employees were temporarily suspended or worked without pay. Trump's stubbornness, which caused the shutdown, resulted in an estimated permanent loss of $3 billion to the US economy. Trump, without any proper plan or strategy, launched a trade war with China, which resulted in loss of at least $314 billion for US companies, as companies had to buy the required product, and indirectly customers were paying for all those tariffs. COVID outbreak was officially declared a public health emergency in the US by Health and Human Services on January 31, 2020. Trump initially ignored the persistent public health warnings and calls for action from health officials within his administration. In February 2020, Trump downplayed the situation by stating, "It's just an influenza and is under control." A month later, Trump privately told Bob Woodward that he was deliberately playing it down because I don't want it to create a panic. As in early summer of 2020, when the infection and death rate continued to climb at a serious rate, he started to play blame games on other states for mismanagement rather than accepting his delayed initial response in COVID. There is a famous saying in politics, if you want to divert public attention from internal crisis and chaos, start a war. This is exactly what Trump started to do. He started accusing and blaming China for spreading the COVID virus and openly called it Chinese virus, and people fell for it. In June and July, Trump said several times that the US would have fewer cases of coronavirus if it did less testing, that having a large number of reported cases makes us look bad. At 2 a.m., the morning after the election, with the results still unclear, Trump himself declared victory. After Biden was projected the winner days later, Trump stated that this election is far from over and baselessly alleged election fraud. On January 6, 2021, while congressional certification of the presidential election results was taking place in the US Capitol, Trump held a noon rally at the Ellipse, Washington, D.C. He called for the election result to be overturned and urged his supporters to take back our country. The mob broke into the building, disrupting certification and causing the evacuation of Congress. At 6 p.m., Trump tweeted that the rioters should go home with love and in peace, calling them great patriots and repeating that the election was stolen. According to the Department of Justice, more than 140 police officers were injured and 5 people died. At the end note, remember that he was president for 4 straight years, and seeing his record on that, you should not be so hopeful that in the next 4 years he will quite literally make America great again.